Good afternoon, everyone. It's great to see so many people here. I want to welcome the family. There's an incredible amount of family members and members from Leslie's unit here. We're so happy to have you here today. Today we pay tribute in this famed Hall of Heroes to induct a national hero who put saving the lives of his fellow men, his brothers, his comrade in arms above his own. As one of the youngest ever to be awarded our nation's highest military honor, Specialist 4 Leslie Sabo Jr. epitomized the very best of what we all strive to be: selfless and intrepid, fearless yet resolute. This hero was a man of action who fought until his last dying breath. We're honored to have Secretary Panetta, Secretary McHugh, Sergeant Major, and Mrs. Chandler. General Foley, thank you so much for being here. And special welcome to Specialist Sabo's family and friends, Miss Rose Brown, her children Jennifer and Stephen, and their families, as well as Rose's mother Frances and sister Kathleen. We appreciate all of you being here. George Sabo, Leslie's brother, and his wife Olga, their three sons, Anthony, Steve, and Michael with their families. It's great that you all could be here today. Former members of the famed 506th Infantry Regiment, to you and everyone else here today, thank you for honoring Specialist Sabo with your presence. And we also honor your service and the great service that you perform for this great nation. Yesterday, the esteemed Medal of Honor was posthumously awarded to Specialist Sabo for his valorous actions 42 years ago in Sisan, Cambodia. Drafted into the Army in April 1969, and 7 months later, a trained infantryman and a newlywed, he deployed with the Screaming Eagles to Vietnam with the 3rd Battalion, 506 Infantry in the elite 101st Airborne Division. 6 months after he got to Vietnam, Specialist Sabo and his band of brothers in the Karahees were part of a massive offensive operation launched into Cambodia. On May 10th, 1970, 5 days into the operation, Specialist Sabo and his fellow infantrymen in Bravo Company were sent on a reconnaissance mission. Deep into unfamiliar enemy territory, the patrol was ambushed by a barrage of gunfire from multiple directions by an estimated 150 North Vietnamese soldiers who were hidden in the dense jungle. It was at this point that 22-year-old Specialist Sabo, with less than 1 year in the Army, went into action and displayed what is truly uncommon valor. Without hesitation and without regard for himself, he charged headstrong into the teeth of the enemy position, killing several enemy in his lone assault. Not taking time to collect himself, he then dauntlessly engaged an enemy flanking force, drawing the fire away from his fellow soldiers and onto himself. His relentless efforts forced the element to retreat. Specialist Sabo depleted his ammunition engaging the enemy in the intense firefight, but sensed opportunity and summoned just a little bit more courage. Oblivious to the withering fire, he sprinted across an open field, totally exposed in broad daylight, to the aid of a wounded comrade. He uncovered, and in the open, a North Vietnamese Army soldier threw a grenade at them. But Specialist Sabo fearlessly picked it up and threw it right back, shielding his wounded battle buddy with his own body. Despite severe shrapnel wounds to his back, Specialist Sabo was not done. Defying the odds, he single-handedly launched his own assault on the enemy bunker that inflicted massive damage on his platoon. In the charge, he sustained additional severe wounds from North Vietnamese automatic weapons fire, yet he still fought on. Crawling, bloodied, and fatigued to the enemy emplacement. With one final act of defiance in the face of an unrelenting enemy, he pulled out the pin and threw his final grenade. Silence followed. Giving his last full measure of devotion, Specialist Sabo accomplished the mission. In the words of Lieutenant John Green, his former platoon leader, the respite Sabo purchased with his life enabled the first evacuation helicopter to get away safely and allowed follow-on troops to secure a landing zone. In doing so, Specialist Sabo went above and beyond the call of duty, courageously making the ultimate sacrifice in his rendezvous with destiny. 7 other soldiers were killed and 28 were wounded in what became known as the Mother's Day ambush. If it were not for Specialist Sabo's gallant actions, these figures would have been significantly higher. With this Medal of Honor, a warrior is held up to the American people as an example to all fellow men and women, with the embodiment of our highest ideals displayed. Our most solemn professional obligation is to honor heroes like Specialist Sabo by retelling these stories of valor and passing them on to future generations. He gave his life so that his brothers who had fought side by side with him could live. And there's nothing more our Army or our nation could ever ask of an American soldier. Specialist Sabo is the epitome of a hero, and he will never be forgotten. And he will live in our minds and hearts forever. And he will be a great example for our sons, our daughters, our grandsons, and our granddaughters to live up to. The strength of our nation is our Army. The strength of our Army is our soldiers. The strength of our soldiers is our families. And this is what makes us Army strong. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, the Honorable John M. McHugh.
There really are a lot of you here. I just put on my glasses. What a thrill. Thank you all so much for joining us in what obviously is a very special occasion. Thank you, Chief, for your very moving recount of that fateful day. Mr. Secretary, thank you for your hosting here this afternoon, and of course for your continued service, Sergeant Major, Mrs. Chandler. Most of all, honored guests and distinguished friends, Rose and George, your loved ones, your families, your friends. And let me say a special welcome also to the members of Bravo Company, 3rd Battalion, 506th Regiment. And in fact, all the Screaming Eagles in the 101st Airborne Division. I know there's a number of you that have joined us as well. Yesterday at the White House, the President, I think, did something particularly appropriate. He asked Les Sabo's comrades on that day to stand and be recognized, and I'd like to repeat that act here today. Gentlemen, would you please stand? The 506 has provided this nation with more than its share of heroes. We're honoring a particular one here today, but as you've just seen, we're joined by others. And we're humbled to be in your presence, in your company. And if I may, in an afternoon of overdue celebrations and testaments, can I say, welcome home. I'm going to borrow from the regiment's motto, if I may, which is stands alone. And I'm going to turn it a little bit because today we really stand together. We stand together as an Army. We stand together as an Army family. And we do so to honor the courage, valor, and sacrifice of another proud Currahee and enshrine him in this Hall of Heroes. As I was thinking about this week's events, I had, as I'm sure many of you did, the opportunity to learn a little bit about Leslie H. Sabo Jr.'s life. And like so many of our nation's heroes, it seems that even family and friends might not have considered and envisioned Les's exceptional valor and uncommon courage, at least not early in his life. In high school, Les joined the bowling and Spanish clubs, played a little basketball. Just an average guy. That's how those who knew him back then described him. Nothing certainly that people found remarkable or extraordinary, at least not at first glance. Certainly nothing that would indicate to the graduating class of 1966 at Lincoln High School that a hero was in their midst. A man who would one day sacrifice his own life to save the lives of his comrades. Perhaps that's indicative of some simple truths. Valor in combat can't really be trained, can't really be taught, certainly can't be predicted, and it sure can't be demanded. It comes from another place, someplace much deeper, something far more personal. It comes from something called character. His brother George spotted it when he said he was always thinking about other people. Neighbors and friends added that he had what they called an inexhaustible pool of emotional generosity. And there was no greater expression of that generosity than what Les Szabo did on May 10th, 1970, the day he sacrificed his own life for the lives of others in his platoon. And I will tell you, if there's any stain on this story, it is ours, the Army's, to bear. It has taken us far too long to properly recognize his heroism and his selflessness. Screaming Eagle magazine's Tony May Jr. made sure we didn't forget Les's service and his sacrifice. Tony claims that it was just an accident that he came across Les's file at the National Archives. Might have been an accident. I'd rather call it fate or destiny. But whatever the case, Tony, thank you for making sure Les Szabo's courage and sacrifice are not forgotten. And I know Tony was at the White House yesterday. I'm not sure if he's here today. If he is, Tony, should you stand? Well, he's standing. There he is in the back. Hey, Tony. Good to wave to you, Tony. In that story, I learned the motto of Les's hometown. What Elwood City builds, Elwood builds Elwood City. Well, Elwood City built a hero, and we're here to honor that here today. I'd like to close with a story, if I may, that is in the book Forgotten Honor, that the President recalled yesterday. But I think it bears repeating, particularly for those who might not have had the chance to hear it. It's a powerful story and a personal story, and it needs to be told. When he was on his way to Vietnam, Les stopped at a florist in San Francisco. Even though he's headed to a war zone half a world away, he was thinking of others, of those he loved. He bought orchids for his mother Elizabeth to be delivered on Mother's Day, May 10th, which turned out to be the day he was killed. And he bought a dozen roses because, well, as he liked to sing, love grows where my rosemary goes, to be delivered on her birthday, Rose's birthday, May 26th. Instead, they arrived a day early on the day of his funeral. And what seemed at first like a cruel joke turned out to be Les Szabo's final gift, or so it seemed. It turned out there was more, because today, I would tell you, we've all received another gift, the blessed memory of a true American hero, Leslie H. Szabo, Jr. We will not only cherish that gift, we will forever preserve it in this, our Hall of Heroes. So, thank you. God bless you all. God bless this great country and this amazing Army who keeps her safe.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Honorable Leon E. Panetta.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon. It's great to see so many people who've turned out for this ceremony. I want to obviously welcome the family. It's an honor for us to have you here at the Pentagon. And I don't know, I think one of the things that impressed me is that the Sabo brothers obviously had good taste because they both married Italians. And I know what that means. But to the leadership from the Pentagon, thank you for being here. Ladies and gentlemen, those that served in the military, we welcome you as well. It's a real privilege to be able to be here today to pay tribute to Leslie Sabo. He was truly a remarkable soldier who displayed the kind of incredible courage and bravery, uncommon valor, that a very special few in history have shown in battle throughout the years. He was and is a true American hero who paid the ultimate price, but also made the ultimate difference by saving the lives of his brothers in arms. All of us are grateful to Specialist Sabo, grateful for his legacy of service and sacrifice that still burns brightly in millions of men and women who serve our nation in uniform today. And grateful to see him finally being honored this week with the recognition that he obviously so richly deserves. I want to join General Odierno and Secretary McHugh in extending a particularly warm welcome to those who fought alongside Les Sabo, and obviously again to his family for being here. I'd like to recognize and thank all of those, particularly those in the 101st Airborne Division who are here and who understand what battle is all about and understand better than all of us what that special sacrifice that Les Sabo did on the battlefield was all about. As Secretary McHugh and others have mentioned, it's a testament to the enduring bonds of Army kinship that it was a fellow Screaming Eagle and a Vietnam veteran who began the campaign to reopen the Medal of Honor process for Les more than 10 years ago. Specialist Sabo's life encompassed three continents, and a sweeping arc of history. His story is in many ways the American story of the 20th century. Les was born in Austria right after World War II to parents who had left Soviet-occupied Hungary and who were making their way to the United States. They joined millions of immigrants, including my own parents, who left Italy a decade earlier to pursue the dream of giving their children a better life. That dream moved the Sabo family to settle in western Pennsylvania, surrounded by coal mines and steel mills. Called an average guy, as John mentioned, by high school classmates, Les played basketball, joined the bowling club, went to work at a steel mill, and as I said, married an Italian girl, Rose Buccelli. In short, Les was living the American dream. But Les had learned the lessons of service and sacrifice at a young age from his immigrant parents. When his family's adopted country called him to serve in April 1969, he answered that call. He put on the uniform of the United States of America, and as importantly, the United States Army, and in an instant, he went from average to exceptional. He joined the storied 506 Infantry Regiment, the same unit that had led the way in liberating his native continent from the grip of fascism 2 decades earlier. Deploying to Vietnam, Les found himself, as Ray mentioned, in the thick of a very tough fight. And within months, he had his encounter with destiny. Yesterday at the White House, and today here at the Pentagon, we've heard the stories of how in the middle of a Mother's Day ambush, Les's decisive and his selfless action saved the lives of so many of his comrades in arms. Yet there are really no words that can fully capture the meaning of that sacrifice. Only the generations of people who will walk the earth because of what Les did that day can fully convey the full impact and importance of his courage and bravery. It has taken over 40 years to correct this wrong. And nobody has said this, but frankly, I think we owe the Sabo family an apology for a citation that somehow got lost. When these things happen, and as secretary, it's the kind of thing that scares the hell out of me every day. You know that some of this is due to the fog of war. Some of this may very well be due to just a big bureaucracy. But when someone is a hero, when someone puts his life on the line for others and does what Les Sabo did, that sacrifice must never be lost. Les, like millions of Americans, ventured across the Pacific at the direction of the country that he loved. Like thousands of others, he never came home. Even as the Vietnam generation, and it's my generation, one in which I served during the Vietnam era in the Army. As that generation ages, this country will never forget their service or their sacrifice. On Memorial Day, I'll have the opportunity to visit the Vietnam Memorial in Washington, along with the President of the United States, and commemorate the 50th anniversary of that war. We will always remember, and we will always carry in our hearts, the more than 58,000 soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, and Coast Guardsmen whose names are now inscribed on that dark wall for eternity. From the brutal battlefields of the Civil War to the trenches of World War I, to the battles of World War II in Korea in Vietnam, in Iraq, in Afghanistan, we have marked our heroes with the Medal of Honor. The strength of this nation, and it's something I see every day, the strength of this nation depends on men and women in uniform who are willing to put their lives on the line. And the heart of this nation depends on those heroes who are willing to make those very special sacrifices that allow this country to always be safe. May God bless Les Habo. May God bless his family. And may God bless all of the men and women in uniform who carry forward his legacy of courage and heroism. Thank you.
Secretary McHugh, General Odierno, Sergeant Major of the Army Chandler, Ms. Brown, and Mr. Sabo will now join Secretary Panetta on stage for the induction ceremony. The Presidents of the United States of America, authorized by Act of Congress, March 3, 1863, has awarded, in the name of Congress, the Medal of Honor to Specialist 4 Leslie H. Sabo, Jr., United States Army, for conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity at the risk of his life above and beyond the call of duty. Specialist 4 Leslie H. Sabo, Jr. distinguished himself by conspicuous acts of gallantry and intrepidity above and beyond the call of duty at the cost of his own life, while serving as a rifleman in Company B, 3rd Battalion, 506th Infantry, 101st Airborne Division, in Sisan, Cambodia, on May 10, 1970. On that day, Specialist 4 Sabo and his platoon were conducting a reconnaissance patrol when they were ambushed from all sides by a large enemy force. Without hesitation, Specialist 4 Sabo charged an enemy position, killing several enemy soldiers. Immediately thereafter, he assaulted an enemy flanking force, successfully drawing their fire away from friendly soldiers and ultimately forcing the enemy to retreat. In order to resupply ammunition, he sprinted across an open field to a wounded comrade. As he began to reload, an enemy grenade landed nearby. Specialist 4 Sabo picked it up, threw it, and shielded his comrade with his own body, thus absorbing the brunt of the blast and saving his comrade's life. Seriously wounded by the blast, Specialist 4 Sabo nonetheless retained the initiative and then, single-handedly, charged an enemy bunker that had inflicted severe damage on the platoon, receiving several serious wounds from automatic weapons fire in the process. Now mortally injured, he crawled towards the enemy emplacement and, when in position, threw a grenade into the bunker. The resulting explosion silenced the enemy fire, but also ended Specialist 4 Sabo's life. His indomitable courage and complete disregard for his own safety saved the lives of many of his platoon members. Specialist 4 Sabo's extraordinary heroism and selflessness above and beyond the call of duty at the cost of his life are in keeping with the highest traditions of military service and reflect great credit upon himself, Company B, 3rd Battalion, 506th Infantry Regiment, 101st Airborne Division, and the United States Army. The Hall of Heroes plaque will now be unveiled, inducting Specialist 4 Leslie H. Sabo, Jr. into the Hall of Heroes. At this time, the Secretary of Defense will present the Medal of Honor flag. On 23 October 2002, Public Law 107-248 Section 8143 established the Medal of Honor flag to recognize service members who have distinguished themselves by gallantry in action above and beyond the call of duty. The Medal of Honor flag commemorates the sacrifice and blood shed for our freedoms and gives emphasis to the Medal of Honor being the highest award for valor by an individual serving in the armed forces of the United States. The light blue color with gold fringe bearing 13 white stars is adapted from the Medal of Honor ribbon. Thank you, Secretary Panetta, Secretary McHugh, General Odierno, Sergeant Major Chandler, and Ms. Brown. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. George Sabo.
Good afternoon. I am George Sabo, Leslie's brother, and I'm not going to talk about his act of valor, which has been well documented to his ultimate sacrifice to receive this Medal of Honor. Everyone here knows his story, and so what I'd like to do is talk about, over the 42 years that it took to get here, some of the key people, and my thanks to all the people that contributed to us being here today. I have made this a fairly brief thank you in his history journey, and so I want to apologize ahead of time if I missed 100 or so people that should be thanked also. But first of all, I'd like to thank Major General Joseph Jaggers and the late George Koziel, who originated this Medal of Honor recommendation along with others in his company. George has passed away, but he was a key contributor to the verification process that the Army undertook when this became forward, that there was a possibility for a Medal of Honor. Certainly I want to thank Tony Mabb, and he's been thanked, rightfully so, by the President, by everyone here, because if it wouldn't have been for Tony going through some documents that were made available to him in 1999, and then his attempt and diligent research that there was something of substance here, and then going on with the process, we wouldn't even be here today. So in a lot of respects, you know, Tony's diligence and research is why we finally got here. I'd like to thank Florida Congresswoman Corinne Brown. And she was instrumental in bringing this information after her and Tony corroborated on what they had found, or collaborated, because I'm sure as many of we know, you know, there's a political side to this, and it had to be brought to the members of Congress and then moved on through the process, and Corinne Brown was very instrumental in starting that process. I want to recognize former President Bush, because there was a statute of limitations on this honor, and he allowed the process to go forward. Certainly the Army's research group, because there's quite a bit of research to validate this medal. And the research group, I'm sure, had a lot of work and very diligent work to corroborate, go find the eyewitness reports, the documentation of something that happened so long ago. And I really want to thank their work. The Army's Board of Review, because after the research group finalized their research, there has to be a review that there's enough evidence here that this is really a Medal of Honor possibility. And I'm sure that that's a tough job. There's lots of heroes in this country. But I want to thank them for making that decision. And then certainly President and Commander-in-Chief Barack Obama for giving the final approval for this honor. All the people involved in completing this Medal of Honor presentation, I'm sure worked very hard to do the right thing and to make it happen. And we here are all very grateful for their efforts. I also want to honor the 7 other men who died that day. I didn't think this was going to happen. Larry DeBoer, James DeBrew, Fred Harms, Tom Merriman, Ernie Moore, Don Smith, and Leslie Wilbanks. These men, along with my brother, gave the ultimate sacrifice that day. And we'll remember them forever in our hearts. For their families here today, I want you to know that the Sabo family considers them all heroes, and this Medal of Honor is for them also. I want to acknowledge the other men of Company B that were in that battle with Leslie, many of them who are here today. You guys are also heroes in our hearts. I want to thank Rick Brown for coming to our home and introducing us to the Curries. Thanks to Jim Wainwright, who invited us to the Company B reunions. Because of these reunions, I've been able to put faces with the names. Of the men my brother fought with. This honor is also for you. And I know you will remember with pride and honor the fact that you served with Leslie. I want to thank Eric Poole, who wrote the book Forgotten Hero about Leslie and the Sabo family going back to our origin in Hungary and chronicling how my parents left the one war in 1944 to giving up their son in another war in 1970. It's a great book describing my brother's journey to receiving the Medal of Honor. In closing, I want to thank you for allowing me to speak. My wife, my 3 sons, their wives, my 7 grandchildren, the Sabo family in its entirety, will have this legacy of Leslie entrenched in our history for future generations. And it's with great pride and a lot of fortune. You know, we talk about the 40 years it took. From my personal standpoint, if it wouldn't have taken that long, I wouldn't have 7 grandchildren here. So when you think about the honor and the ability to pass this honor on into 4 generations of Sabos, having my grandchildren saying, I was there, that's wonderful. So thank you for giving my brother the highest honor this country can give to a soldier. God bless you, and God bless the United States.
Thank you, Mr. Sabo. Ladies and gentlemen, Miss Rose Brown.
Good afternoon. I am so proud that my husband, Leslie Sabo, has received the Medal of Honor and has been inducted into the Pentagon Hall of Heroes. My family and I are honored and happy that my Bravo Company family is with us today. Many of these wonderful people of my Bravo Company family lost loved ones in Vietnam War. I want to share this honor, my love, and admiration for those who made the ultimate sacrifice in battle and their family members. Thank you so much for honoring Leslie, my husband, and the fallen brothers of Bravo Company. May God bless you all.
Please be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, at this time, Ms. Brown would like to present the Medal of Honor Presidential Citation, signed and presented by President Obama on May 16th at the White House to the Sabo family. Thank you, Mr. Sabo. Ms. Brown. Ladies and gentlemen, please stand as the Vietnam War flag is returned to its rightful place in the Hall of Heroes. Ladies and gentlemen, please remain standing and join in the singing of the Army song and remain standing for the departure of the official party. The words to the Army song can be found in your program.
First to fight for the right and to build the nation's might, and the Army goes rolling along. Proud of all we have done, fighting till the battle's won, and the Army goes rolling along. Then it's hi, hi, hey, the Army's on its way. Count off the cadence loud and strong, 2, 3, for wherever we go, you will always know that the Army goes rolling along. Army strong, hoo!